안녕하세요. 여러분의 한국어 선생님 고빌입니다. If you've spent any time online lately, you've probably heard some news about artificial intelligence, or more specifically, something known as ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT is essentially an artificial intelligence which you can chat and interact with and ask questions, and it'll reply to you in a way that mimics an actual human. Well, a smart human. For example, say you're trying to cook something but you're missing an important ingredient. You can ask it to alter the recipe for you using what you have on hand. Do you have a recipe for making bulgogi without any meat? Tofu. Okay, I should have expected that. This sounds really good. This is so crazy. It just keeps going. Or say that you're a writer. Well, you might ask it to analyze something that you've written and provide feedback. Can you write a very short poem about learning to speak Korean? Learning Korean anew. Sounds unfamiliar, yet true. Studying every day, slowly I find my way. Can you write one more? Korean language, so new to me. Words and phrases I strive to see. With each lesson I gain insight, and step by step, I take flight. Now, we've seen examples of AI in the past, such as machine translation or chatbots. Does anyone remember Smarter Child back in the old AOL days? But ChatGPT really is the next step in this sort of artificial intelligence, and the best part about it is that it's completely free, while actual Korean teachers are not. I mean, I have tons of free content right here, free lessons, and I do free live streams. But wait, why am I trying to defend my job? It's not like I've lost it yet. So in this video, I'm going to put ChatGPT to the test, seeing how or if it can be used as a Korean learning tool, as well as how it compares to someone with over 10 years of teaching experience and a really fashionable outfit. First though, if you'd like to see more videos like this, please give this video a like and subscribe. Also, please consider joining my Patreon page as a supporter. You can send me your ideas for videos that you'd like to see, and your support helps me to make more and better content. So I'll start by giving something simple to ChatGPT, and then we'll see just how far we can push it. Now, for a disclaimer, nothing that I'm showing you here has already been tried in advance. I do not know what answers it's going to give us, and nothing here is being filtered so that it performs better or worse. So let's have some fun. The first thing that I want to ask it is something that a beginner might want to know, and that's just how someone can learn Korean. So tips for learning. So let's ask it what it thinks are the top 5 tips for learning Korean. What are the top 5 tips for learning Korean? Tip 1, immerse yourself in the language. The more you immerse yourself in the language, the better you'll get at it. This is very true. Listen to Korean music, watch Korean TV shows and movies, read books, and speak as much as possible. Even if you don't have anyone to practice with, you can still speak to yourself in Korean. This is also true. Hangul is the Korean alphabet, and learning is essential to being able to read and write. Spend some time practicing and memorizing the characters, and then use them to read simple words, okay? Build your vocabulary. Practice, practice, practice. This is wonderful. This is like something I could have written, or really any teacher could have written. Find a language exchange partner or tutor to practice with. This is wonderful. Be consistent and patient. Learning a language takes time and effort, so be patient with yourself and stay consistent in your studies. Set achievable goals and celebrate your progress along the way. With time and dedication, you'll be able to communicate in Korean with confidence. We're off to a great start because that's incredible. Now, while that's not necessarily the most in-depth guide for how you can learn Korean, those are legitimately 5 good tips for learning, and the way that they're written seems to be like an actual human wrote it. I already know, though, the next thing that I want to ask, and that's just to see how it does correcting a sentence, because this is something that any native Korean speaker, whether they have any teaching experience or not, should be able to do for you. So this sentence I'm going to put into ChatGPT was actually provided by one of my students with her permission. But first, let me do my best to correct it. So the sentence is, 대학생들은 크리스마스 계절에 쉰 날 3개월쯤 받는다. And if we translate this, we get something like, college students receive about 3 months to rest in the Christmas season. And this sentence already makes sense when I try to read it, but there are some parts that we can improve. So the first part, 대학생들은, is fine, college students. The next part, 크리스마스 계절, literally is Christmas season, but 계절 is a word that's only used to mean an actual season, so spring, summer, fall, and winter. So instead, you could say something like 크리스마스 시즌, literally just Christmas season, which is okay. Or you could say 쯤. 쯤 is a word that means around sometime. So 크리스마스쯤에 around Christmas. And the 에 gets added here since we're using a time. So at the time of around Christmas. Okay, the next part, 쉰 날, should be 쉬는 날. From the verb 쉬다, meaning to rest or to take a break, and 날 meaning a day. So literally, rest days or days off. 쉰 날, though, actually is grammatically correct, and it makes sense, but it's the past tense form of the verb, so it would actually mean here days that I rested. And 쉬는 here again is the present tense, so days that I rest, not days that I rested. I would also add in the object marker after 날, and that's because the sentence here ends with 받는다, so we get, and we use the object marker to mark what it is that we get. So altogether, the sentence we get is 대학생들은 크리스마스 즈음에 쉬는 날을 3개월쯤 받는다. So college students receive about 3 months off around Christmas. Now, the end of this sentence is 받는다, and that's using what's known as the plain form. But in speech, this verb, 받다, meaning to receive or to get, could instead become 받아요 or 받아, for example. But let's just leave it as 받는다 since this was originally from a journal entry, so the plain form is more appropriate. And while we could rewrite this sentence in many other ways, of course, the goal here isn't to create a sentence that I want to say, but to help the student to express themselves better. So let's now see what ChatGPT comes up with for this sentence. Okay, let's try it. Okay, it did not fail. Yeah, this sentence is pretty perfect. You can see here it also changed 크리스마스 계절 for Christmas season. It changed that to 크리스마스 시즌, and it also added 정도 after. That wasn't an error, but I agree that 정도 would be a little bit better for this sort of sentence. 가지다 is the verb here at the end. 가집니다 is to have. So they kind of changed the sentence, ChatGPT. Instead of saying they receive or they get, they changed it to they have. Now, it did change the 받는다, so it changed the plain form into the 니다 ending, which is more formal. But the sentence itself is perfect. And it even did some really nice stuff. It added in 3개월 정도의 방학. So a break that's about 3 months long. And it added in this word here, 보통, toward the beginning. So usually or regularly. It wasn't in there in the original sentence, but it really adds a better feel to this sentence. So you're not just saying that they get 3 months, but you're saying they usually get about 3 months. Like the only thing I would change to make this better would be to change the sentence to use plain form. And I never told it had to be in plain form. So this is an A sentence. Okay, let's move on to another task, which is explaining concepts, because this is something that most native Korean speakers can't do. In fact, you would need some teaching experience to explain concepts clearly to a learner. And the topic that I want to ask it to explain is one that I get asked about all the time, and that's the difference between the words 저 and 나, which both mean I or me. Now, the difference is fairly simple. 저 has a more polite feeling, so typically you would use it to anyone older than you, anyone who's a stranger or who you're meeting for the first time. And using 저 feels as if you're almost lowering yourself down to whoever you're speaking to. So it shows a basic level of respect, like saying, I respect you. So basically, if you're ever not already sure what to use, just use 저. 나, on the other hand, has a familiar feel and a friendly feeling. So typically, you'll use it to your friends who are the same age as you or younger, or to very young children. Now, unlike 저, 나 is more of a neutral sounding word. So it's not like you're lowering yourself down at all, but instead just speaking to someone else directly. And that's why you'll often hear older people using 나 when talking about themselves often, since they're older. They might not feel like they should be lowering themselves to anyone who's younger than them. And there's a little bit more to these words as well. You can also use 나 toward anyone who's given you permission to use it. This is especially common in relationships between a native Korean speaker and a Korean learner. In addition, typically you can use it toward other family members, but let's just stop there and see how ChatGPT does. Can you tell me the difference between the words 저 and 나? When should I use each of them? It even adds in romanization. I hate this. Yes, 저 and 나 are both pronouns in Korean, but they are used in slightly different contexts. This is correct. 저 is a more formal pronoun that is used to refer to oneself in polite or formal situations, such as when speaking to someone of higher status, to a stranger, or in a formal setting. For example, when speaking to an elderly person or someone in a position of authority, you might use 저 to show respect. Okay. It can also be used to refer to oneself in writing, such as in formal emails or letters. Yeah, formal emails or letters, that's correct. 나, on the other hand, is a more casual and informal pronoun that it's used in everyday situations, like speaking to friends, family, colleagues. It's also commonly used in informal writing, such as in text messages, chat rooms, or social media. In general, if you're unsure which pronoun to use, it's best to use 나 in informal situations with... Oh, I see. I thought it was going to say just use 나. Use 나 in informal situations with people you know well, and use 더 in more formal or polite situations, strangers, people you don't know well. I mean, I could do better, but it's not terrible. I've seen worse explanations. A couple things, though, that I would say it didn't get correct. Everyday situations when speaking to friends, correct. Family, correct. Colleagues, wrong. Colleagues, you would definitely not want to use this with, unless, again, they're your friends. These are still people that you're showing a basic level of respect toward. And again, it'll depend on your relationship with the colleague. You might be really close, then in that case, you could speak more casually. But it doesn't mean that just because you're close colleagues, you're speaking this, you still would use 저 typically to the older colleague, and then they might use 나 toward you. So I think this is simplifying things a little bit too much. The other thing is the next thing that it said after that. It's also commonly used in informal writing. Chat rooms, yes. Text messages are really just how you would speak to the person anyway. You're not going to suddenly start using 나 just because you're texting your boss. Social media as well. If you're addressing a social media post to no one in particular, then you would use 나. But if you're trying to address it to someone else, you would still use 저 or 나 appropriately. So I think it's a bit oversimplified, but I think it did fairly well, and most of it is correct. One more type of question I get asked is not grammar, but explaining just the meaning of words. So let's throw it a curveball and see how it can explain something a bit trickier to explain, like the word 눈치. Now, 눈치 is a noun that means essentially situational awareness or social awareness, and it's being able to read the room, and especially it's being aware of how other people are feeling or thinking. So if someone has no 눈치, that means they might say something awkward in the middle of a serious conversation, and they might not even realize that what they said was awkward. And you might call someone like that with no 눈치. You might say that they are clueless, but really it's just saying they have no social awareness. On the other hand, someone who has fast 눈치 is very perceptive and quick at reading the room and knowing how other people are feeling. And there are many expressions that 눈치 is used in, such as 눈치를 보다, meaning that you're looking at people and trying to read them, and this can often be translated as walking on eggshells. Okay, but let's stop there now and see how ChatGPT does. Can you explain the word 눈치 in simple terms? Sure. I love how positive it is. Like, yeah, of course, I've got this. 눈치 is a Korean word that doesn't have an exact equivalent in English, but it can be roughly translated to mean sensitivity or perception in social situations. Very good. Let's say you're at a dinner party and you notice that one of the guests seems uncomfortable. You might use your 눈치 to pick up on this cue and try to engage with that person. Okay. In general, having good 눈치 is considered an important social skill. Okay, this is good, but I wanted to see if it can give me any examples. So could you give me an example of 눈치 in a sentence? Here's an example of 눈치 in a Korean sentence. 이번 회의에서는 민감한 이슈가 다뤄지니까 상사님 눈치를 보면서 발언해야 해. Sensitive issues will be discussed in the meeting. Yeah. Literally, sensitive issues will be dealt with. I need to be careful and watch my boss's cues before I speak. It even used 상사님. That's really good. You get an A for this one. But I'm watching you. Now let's step it up a notch, and I want to try some more advanced questions because it's not uncommon that beginners will ask questions that are actually quite advanced level. For example, does the sentence 제가 하겠어요, meaning I will do it, sound awkward in Korean? The answer is yes. While it makes sense grammatically, the 겠다 ending is typically only used to mean the future tense when it's used in formal speech. So 제가 하겠습니다 is fine, but typically the 겠어요 ending or any variation such as 겠네요 will be used when you mean not the future tense, but instead would be or must be. In fact, it's commonly used together with a verb stem that's in the past tense to say would have been or must have been or would have done if it's an action verb. So you have past tense plus the ending 겠다, and you get something would have been or must have been. For example, 힘들었겠어요. That must have been difficult for you from the verb 힘들다, meaning to be difficult. Or 맛있었겠네요. That must have been delicious. Using the verb 맛이 있다 to be delicious, say after your friend shows you a picture of some food that they ate. Now, instead, to express something like I will do it, you can use just the regular future tense form, so 제가 할 거예요. Or even the 게요 ending, so 제가 할게요, among other ways that you could say it. And you can see that this is already turning into a much larger explanation, so let's just see how ChatGPT does. Actually, first, let's just see if it even knows how this sentence sounds. Does it sound natural if I say 제가 하겠어요 to mean I will do it in Korean? Aha! 제가 하겠어요 can be a natural way to say I will do it in Korean. 제가 means I, and is a common way to refer to oneself. Okay, but if you want to sound even more polite, you could use the honorific verb ending 겠습니다. Okay. 제가 하겠습니다. So it did catch that at least. It got it wrong. Okay, I can keep my job for right now. So it said it is natural. Now, the reason it said that, I think I know the reason it said it, is because you could say that sentence and there's nothing wrong with it grammatically, and it does mean that, except that it's not the natural way it would be said. The actual reason, though, is because 겠다, the ending itself, has slightly more of a formal feeling than the standard 할 거예요, the 거예요 ending. And because of that, it tends to get used with more formal usage, so it sounds less natural if you're using it straightforward like that. It got it wrong here, but it still did give the additional way to say it with 하겠습니다, so I will give it some points for that. So for this answer, I would give it a C. Now, I had prepared something else to ask it if it got this correct, but let's just pretend that it got it correct and let's give it that next question anyway and see how it does. Why is it not natural to say 제가 하겠어요 to mean I will do it? Okay. Now, I will say that when it's wrong, it sounds very confident because here it's clarifying its previous answer. I was trying to see if I can kind of teach it. No, it's actually a very natural and commonly used way of saying I will do it. Before we move on to something else, I want to see if I can really test ChatGPT now with a more difficult question. It's actually kind of a trick question. I want to ask if it's possible to use the verb ending 세요, which is an honorific verb ending like in the word 하세요, together with the verb ending 나 or 나요, which shows curiosity. And the answer is sort of. You can't use two verb endings together, so no. 세요, such as in 하세요, ends the verb, so you can't attach anything else to it, including any other verb endings like 나. But if you change 세요, which is originally the ending 으시다, that's just been conjugated to the 요 form, so 하시다 becomes 하세요, then yes, you can attach 나 and get 하시나 or 하시나요. So let's ask. Is it possible to use the verb ending 세요 together with the verb ending 나? You got it. But let's see if it explains it. The verb ending 세요 is a polite form of the verb ending 다. Technically, yeah, sure. If you conjugate the verb 다, then yeah. Present tense declarative statements. No, that's not true, but it's not completely wrong, but that's not true. It's often used in formal or polite situations, yes, such as when speaking to strangers, older people, or people of higher status, yes. The verb ending 나 is a conjunctive form of the verb ending 다, which is used to connect clauses. It misunderstood the question, I think. It's thinking that 나 is a different form. There is a 나 which is used to connect sentences, and it can have the meaning of but or however. So let's try rewording the sentence because I think it didn't understand. What it did say, though, that it's for declarative statements. While that's true, 세요 is more often used for making commands. Declarative statement would be just saying something is this, and it can be used for that as well. Now I'm going to try asking it with 나요 instead of 나, since 나요 is definitely not the connecting one. Unless it thinks connector plus yo. We'll see. Any teacher, though, should know what I'm talking about at this point. Yes, it is possible to use the verb ending 세요 with the verb ending 나요. The verb ending 나요 is a question form, that's true, which is used to express alternatives. I mean, you could use it if you're saying, well, how about this? But no. But then the examples it gives are using the 으시다 form, which I was mentioning. So here, the second sentence does. 여기서 한국어 공부하시나요? Yes, that is perfect. And maybe to a learner who knows that ChatGPT isn't really sentient, that could still be beneficial because they could read that second sentence and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It got it like half right. So it did give a good example. One of them uses just the 세요 and the other one just uses the 나요 ending, but the middle one uses it. But then the answer it gives is wrong because it misinterpreted the 나요 ending. Or maybe it thinks that it's the same form. I don't know. I don't know what it's thinking. Anyway, I would give this a C. So now we've tried asking it for corrections and explanations. But if ChatGPT is going to replace Korean teachers, there's still one thing that it'll have to be able to do, and that's teach. I often get asked by people to help them translate their fan letters to Korean. Now, I've already made a simple video on my channel about how you can do this, which I'll put in the description below. The really short version of that video, though, is that you'll start the letter with their name and their title, and that can be like 빌리 오빠 or 빌리 형 or 빌리 씨 if you just want to be polite. Then you would attach 에게, which means to. So 빌리 씨에게, for example, that would mean to Billy, so dear Billy. And then you would just write the letter the same way that you would speak. Just remember to be polite because you would be polite when speaking. So you can say hello, you can tell them why you're writing, and then finish the letter by wishing them well. For example, by saying 항상 건강하세요. So always be healthy. And then at the end of the letter, you can write your name followed by 드림, meaning from. So from Billy, 빌리 드림. Again, if you want to learn more about this is just the really quick overview. There will be a link to that in the description. But let's just see how ChatGPT does with this. Teach me how to write a fan letter in Korean to my favorite Korean idol. Sure, here's a sample fan letter in Korean you could use as a template. 이름씨 안녕하세요. Okay, yeah, it works. 저는 국적, so the nation that you're from. So you would say 미국 or wherever. 에서 나이, your age. 살인 빌리라고 합니다. Oh, that's wonderful. Wait a minute. There is a verb missing here. So you can't just say from country by saying 국적, your nationality,에서. So you can't just say 미국에서 빌리라고 합니다. That doesn't make any sense in Korean. You have to say came from. So you would need a verb like 오다 to come. So you could say 미국에서 온, and then your age and your name like that. And then there's a couple other parts here that don't really sound very natural. Here, 그동안의 활동을 늘 기대하며. 그동안 means like during that time. We're not sure what time is it that we're talking about. But again, if you're having a computer write your fan letter for you, I mean, I'm sure they'll understand what you're trying to say. 항상 건강하시고, it did use the phrase, always be healthy, and 좋은 일만 가득하시길 바랍니다. I hope you're full of only good things. And it has an English translation for it as well, which is very helpful. There's another mistake here. Actually, it looks like it's repeated twice, and that's when it says 그룹/가수 이름. So the group or the artist's name, and then it doesn't follow it with 시. You definitely want to make sure you're still using a title each time you mention a person's name. I wouldn't say you would want to use this, but let's see if we can fix this. Let's see if we can improve it. Can you make this letter much shorter? 이름씨 안녕하세요. There we go. 저는 그룹 가수 이름의 팬이에요. I'm a fan of you. 항상 건강하시고 좋은 일만 가득하시길 바라요. I think not bad. I mean, not perfect, but like the stuff it gets right is really good. So now that we've tried it out in a variety of situations, here are my overall feelings on using it. I think that overall it did a fairly good job. In certain situations, this could be helpful. For example, like you're trying to just write a really quick fan letter and you just kind of want a template to help you out, or you have some simple questions that you want to ask. However, I still would be quite careful using it, not because I'm a Korean teacher and I'm worried about people using this instead of asking teachers questions, but because there's one thing that you probably noticed, even when it's wrong, it is very trustworthy and confident sounding. I could easily see somebody asking it a question, for example, what's the difference between these two grammar forms? And then trusting that answer and it's actually incorrect. I kind of want to try a few more things though. I think in some areas it did excellent. Overall, would I use it? Personally, no, but that's because I'm already a teacher. So for me, it's fun. I can see when it gets things right and what it gets wrong exactly. So yeah, just keep that in mind that it's not quite trustworthy completely, but I won't say that it's terrible. It did give some really interesting stuff. What do you think would be the best title for a YouTube video about showing the capabilities of ChatGPT for teaching Korean and whether or not it can teach Korean better than a teacher who's operating ChatGPT in the video? I'm gonna use one of these. I should also add that while ChatGPT isn't perfect, it does seem to be improving fairly quickly, so maybe in a few more years I might need to do an updated version of this video. Let me know if you'd like to see that. And have you tried ChatGPT before, and what do you think that it's good at, or where do you think it still needs improvement? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more. Also, this video was made possible thanks to the generous support of my Patreon and YouTube sponsors. And if you would like to support me to make more videos, please consider joining my Patreon or becoming a member on my channel. I'll put links to those in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time. 그럼 다음에 또 봐. So what's an alternate way I could say 그럼 다음에 또 봐? 그럼 다음 영상에서 만나요. Oh, yeah, that's really good. 그럼 다음 영상에서 만나요.